Hello and welcome back to TriggerSmart. As many of you saw last night, Candace Owens brought out some new details from a gentleman named Harry, at least he used to be called Harry, who the story goes on for quite some time. If you want to see the whole thing, go watch the video. But the big takeaway is that Brian Harpole is alleged by this gentleman to have been at some high-level meeting in Arizona, and it was the day before Charlie Kirk was murdered. So we're going to look at a small piece of that, but then I also want to dig into who is Brian Harpole, like what are his qualifications? Even if there wasn't some big conspiracy, was he even qualified to protect Charlie? So let's dig into it. So this is her telling the story, and I'm going to try and keep it as short as I can.
This is on the evening of September 8th. I want you to remember that, okay? He has been so thorough. He has sent me timestamps, bookings, reservations, went through his call logs. I was like, I want you to pinpoint when everything happened. So he gets to the Candlewood Suites at approximately, on September 8th, 5:37 p.m., checks into the hotel. And you can imagine he's a person that pays a lot of attention to his surroundings.
So I'm not going to make you suffer through all this. If you really want to go watch it, she takes about 45 minutes to tell you something she could say in 5 minutes. But long story short, this gentleman who used to fight the cartels is now on the run from the cartels. The government basically double-crossed him, he thinks. And he's been 35 years on the run. And he's gotten to the point now where he's ready to talk. And his NDA apparently was up in March of 2025. So she actually called him based on another email that she received. The short version of what this was is that the guy basically walked in on a meeting he shouldn't have been in. And he walked into some location, and he claims that there were high-level brass there, you know, colonels and lieutenants and that kind of stuff in the military. And apparently someone in the military with the last name Neff, like Blake Neff. And even more than that, this guy, after Charlie was shot and had seen the evidence and the people in the interview on Sean Ryan, recognized Brian Harpole as being someone that was in this high-level meeting that was 2 days before Charlie was assassinated. So her implications of this email and this information is that Brian Harpole was at a very strange meeting 2 days before Charlie was assassinated and may have been a part of this.
Like I said, I have verified. He has sent me so many documents. It's an event at a stadium, and everybody is in front of the camera eulogizing him. He feels confident that he recognizes these people, and that needs to be shared. He's willing to tell a story. Like I said, I have verified. He has sent me so many documents, everything from his high school graduation certificate to his military documents to the police records to everything that he is speaking about that happened.
So you get the point. She's saying that she has verified this guy multiple different ways. My question about this is, why would he send all that stuff out to her? If he's been on the run from the cartel all these years, why would he just why would he send out his high school diploma proof and every credential about him and everything that identifies him and where he's been and what he's done to her, of everyone on the planet? Do you know how much trust that would take? So now you know the allegation from Candace Owens about Brian Harpole from this gentleman, Harry, whose name is probably no longer Harry. He's saying that Brian Harpole was indicated in that meeting that was very strange with high-level military officers. I believe it was up to 12 or 13. But that's very, very uncommon for that many to meet in one place at a time. And the fact that Brian Harpole was there when he is not military himself, and he is not important enough to be with those people unless there's something possibly nefarious going on. These are the allegations that are being made. So now let's dig into Brian Harpole. Many of you have seen this Sean Ryan interview, and then there was a follow-up interview on Paramount Tactical, and basically he made his situation worse by going on. It seemed like the way they were softballing questions were basically trying to just help him clear his name or clear his company's name. And it's very interesting because people kind of saw right through it. And obviously he exposed the fact that he didn't verify himself that the roof was covered. He basically said that the Orem or UVU police were doled out or delegated that from him because they said they would take care of it, and he never followed up. So regardless of what's going on, whether he is indicated in these other meetings and this high-level thing, if that actually ends up being true, he still dropped the ball regardless, but he could have dropped it on purpose. That's the allegations. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into who he was, high level. Brian Harpole, former head of security for Charlie Kirk. So that would indicate that he may have been fired. And that may also explain why Dan Flood is no longer on the TPUSA website. Maybe they both got fired. And the lead security detail at Utah University event where Kirk was assassinated. He runs Integrity Security Solutions, a private security training company. Operations are reported to be in Texas. Apparently, there's another company with the same name that operates somewhere else. He was in law enforcement. He was a former Texas police officer for 14 years. He included patrol, tactical operations, criminal narcotics, bicycle unit training, and administrative roles. He has 25 plus commendations for valor, meritorious service and conduct, life-saving, and Officer of the Year honors. So this guy is a very highly decorated police officer. And then he made a transition to private security. Around 2008, he left policing and became operations manager for a Texas-based security firm, executive and personal protection for dignitaries and their families, high-value asset protection, and overseeing complex operations. He later founded Integrity Security Solutions, a global security provider and contractor. He provided protection for non-governmental organizations and other clients. He says he works on 5 continents providing protective services. I have tried to find any other client besides Charlie Kirk anywhere on the internet, and I cannot find another single client that they cover. But again, that could just be the way they do business. So now let's look at education and credentials. College degree, honors graduate from Columbia. Licensing Academies holds a Master Peace Officer license from the state of Texas. Graduate of International Law Enforcement School of Police Supervision. Graduate of Southern Methodist University's CAPE Intelligence Program. Training volume, more than 4,400 plus hours of advanced instruction in law enforcement and executive protection practices. So based on all of this, you would have to assume that this guy could easily handle a task of personal protection for Charlie Kirk, including things like verifying the roof was covered. It looks like he's also won 20 plus medals in police Olympics, and he claims to have completed 325 plus endurance events across the U.S. So it looks like he is physically and mentally an elite officer of some sort, based on his own admission. And then we have Integrity Security Solutions, founded by Brian Harpole, executive protection, event security and training, high-profile political events, and his role in the Charlie Kirk event. Obviously, he was the head of security that day, and he led the security detail all the way through the UVU event in the assassination. He also has done business as Rock House Integrity Group. So it says by his own account, he was near Kirk or just off stage. He immediately covered Kirk and applied pressure to his neck wound. Remember, he said that blood squirted up on him and that kind of stuff. He rode with Kirk to the hospital and was trying to help him stop bleeding. So that's the high-level information. And Candace says that this guy, Harry, claims that Brian Harpole, who he recognized after the fact, was in this meeting in Arizona 2 days before Charlie Kirk was assassinated. And this meeting is important because based on what she's saying or they allege, is that there was high-level military involved and Brian Harpole was there. Why? And then someone with the last name Neff, which is the same last name as Blake at TPUSA, who's been going back and forth with Candace. So I'm not sure what this all means in the long run. Obviously, we don't have enough information to know, but the allegations are very interesting. Let's get back into it. So now let's get into more controversy. He's been criticized by other security professionals. At least one detailed blog posted by another protection provider argues that Harpole lacked the right kind of experience for high-risk executive protection, describing his mindset as too traditional law enforcement and critiquing his planned and threat assessment decisions around UVU. So let's look at that really quick. This is MSB Protection, Private Security. Title unfit for the role, why Brian Harpole lacked the experience for Charlie Kirk's protection. Now, this is in the case that he was not part of the allegations of planning to kill Charlie Kirk. This is assuming that he had nothing to do with it and he just was terrible at his job. So this guy's talking about the first red flags. Harpole approached private protection like a police agency. His language, his structure, and his unit thinking all mirror traditional law enforcement culture. Okay. His focus was reactive and tactical. He talked about hands-on training gear and action, not about pre-attack behavior, environment shaping, red zone exposure, or movement architecture. He leaned on his police background as if that automatically qualifies someone to lead a protective detail. It does not. And now he kind of differentiates the difference between law enforcement and executive protection. Law enforcement is built around responding to crimes, making arrests, collecting evidence, and writing reports. Executive protection is built around preventing attacks, denying access, reducing exposure, and reading behavior before it turns into violence. Now, in all fairness, Brian Harpole did say that he and his team were kind of trying to do some of this pre-reading of people. He said they would go up to certain people with backpacks and ask them like, hey, what are you doing here today, right? So they were doing some of that stuff. Then he says why Harpole was never prepared for executive protection leadership. It's not personal, it's structural. Routine patrol does not teach you how to prevent a targeted attack. SWAT training does not teach you how to design a safe movement pattern for a principal. Tactical unit culture does not teach you how to control exposure at a political event or in a UHNW neighborhood. Harpole simply did what many officers do. He assumed his law enforcement background translated directly into executive protection. Now, this is important as well because his website is now down for his company. So I was curious in the first place. Now, this is just me thinking, right? This isn't an official fact or anything. But when he and Dan Flood broke off from Greg Schaefer's group and they created their own company and they got awarded the contract to protect Charlie, were they doing that under false guises? Did they create a website and a company and basically lie to get that position? Because they did work with Greg Schaefer previous to that, and they were protecting Charlie for many years under Greg Schaefer's group before they made their own. Just something interesting to think about. And then this is kind of his big takeaway, the real lesson from the Harpole interview. The assumption that tactical police experience equals private protection capability is flawed. He says that professional executive work is not about tactical gear, firearms, ego, or credentials from a police department. It's about prevention, exposure control, behavioral analysis, and environment shaping. That is Secret Service style methodology. It does not come from police work unless specifically trained. Now, you have to remember too that Harpole did have some executive style training, and apparently he spent some time doing some executive protection style training courses and things like that as well. So how much of that he got or how much experience he had, I don't know. And then here it covers what we talked about earlier. It suggested he might have been present at a high-level military meeting in Arizona shortly before the assassination based on a tip. Floated broader deep state military implications. So far, she has not provided public evidence, which she never does. So this is very interesting because if this is true, then that blows the whole thing wide open and it proves that the government was involved, right? And that would just destroy everything. So then really quick, I just want to go through the timeline of his career. So 14 years as an officer, 1990s to 2008, 4,400 hours of specialized training in tactical, master's peace officer's license, earned an honors degree from Columbia, was in the police Olympics, winning 20 plus medals, 300 plus endurance events. 2008, he stopped being a police officer. Private security career started in 2008 to the 2010s. He became operational manager of a private Texas security company, where included executive protection for public figures, dignitaries, business leaders. So if this is true, then that means when he was protecting Charlie, he had had at least 15 years of this executive protection for public figures, dignitaries, and business leaders. Interesting. Security planning and logistics, training teams. He expanded into risk assessment, intelligence-driven threat analysis, NGO protective work, and emergency response instruction. Founding of Integrity Security Solutions. He formed his firm, and it was same thing, executive protection, event security, and all of that, church and venue security assessments. And he operated in partnership with larger umbrella group, which was the Rock House that we've been talking about. For TPUSA specifically, he was working security for Charlie Kirk, 2023 to 2025. Now, this, I think, is incorrect. He worked from 2023 to 2025 with his specific company for Charlie Kirk. But he worked under Greg Schaefer for many years before that, protecting Charlie Kirk. And he did personal protection, oversaw TPUSA hosted events. He functioned as the security chief, and he was part of the mixed team combining TPUSA in-house personnel, integrity contractors, venue security, and local law enforcement, depending on the event. And of course, when the event happened, he was head of security, and everything was on him, basically. And then it moves into post-assassination. He's publicly addressed conspiracy theories, claims of hand signals, allegations involving Erica Kirk, and military intelligence involvement. He clarified that his team uses radios, not hand gestures. They use normal movements like anyone else. And attacks on Erica Kirk are false and malicious. He's faced criticism from outside protection professionals regarding threat models, perimeter selection, line of fire vulnerabilities, and protective positioning. Now, again, these other people that are criticizing him, unless they know exactly what he's known and what kind of training he did in those 4,400 hours of personal protective training and that kind of stuff, it's really just their opinion at that point. All right, so now let's do some cross-analysis, training and background claims. So basically, this is what he says versus what's supposedly true based on facts. He says he's had extensive training and all this expertise. That basically checks out, no contradictions. Says his credentials are consistent with open sources. UVU security posture, did his positioning make sense? He says the venue dictated limitations, his team covered entrances, hallways, and stage, and he believed the rooftop threat from Leslie Center was implausible. Okay? And he said shooter's window was not in our threat matrix. Cross-check. Many experts dispute this, noting multi-story structures overlooking an event must be in the threat model. A rooftop 140 meters away with line of sight is highly relevant, obviously. Oversight is criticized as a failure in high-level EP standards, executive protection. News outlets confirm the shot traveled approximately 140 meters from a separate building across campus. That's the FBI official narrative, of course. This is the most controversial point. Critics argue that the threat model was insufficient, and Harpole said constraints and intel dictated otherwise. So basically, he was making excuses for either his lack of professionalism and experience, and or he might be allegedly implicated in this new information from Candace Owens, then he might have been involved in a much bigger plot. And then let's skip down to integrity, security, and TPUSA. So he says he was hired to lead security. There were changes in Kirk's broader ecosystem for security over the years, and he denied involvement in any internal politics. Fact-checking. Conflicting narratives exist. Some sources claim earlier firms, Greg Schaefer, were replaced due to internal conflict. Some allege Harpole was brought in partly due to cost loyalty disputes. None of this is verified. They're saying it's more of a political thing, political back and forth. But I did a video yesterday that kind of covered that as well, and it looks like it was political, internal to TPUSA. And they're saying it's rumors, there's public noise but little concrete documentation. And of course, based on having no receipts, the military Arizona meeting allegation, Candace Owens. Owens' claim, Harpole attended a high-level meeting in Arizona with military connections. Says a source in witness protection provided his tip. Cross-check, of course, no evidence, no corroborating names, locations, rosters, or surveillance logs exist. Owens herself frames it as, I was told, not I verified. So unsubstantiated, no public supporting evidence exists. So what is the big takeaway from all of this? If you want to refer to Candace Owens, I know that the other big players on social media are probably going to start running with that claim and claim to find things that support it. And I doubt anyone's going to go against it because it's not popular or trendy. But based on what she said and who she's saying has said it, it's either a very good story, or if it is true, there's still no receipts or proof. But of course, that would be something she would kind of keep to herself unless they actually found more specific evidence. And I think she said she might actually have him on the show or something similar. But we'll see what comes out of that. Now, if he was in this meeting with this high-level military personnel and the government is indicated, then that's another major, major issue. That's a whole different box. And I think in that case, you're looking at like MLK, JFK style stuff. You're looking at internal government attacking its own political activists and leaders to create divide or stop or change power or something similar. Now, these are all allegations. Only time will tell what's true. But I think at the least, based on Brian Harpole and his profile that we've gone over here, he seems like he should have been qualified. He should have been qualified for this, right? He had a lot of hours. He has police work. He has executive protection work. It looks like he had about 15 years of experience before he actually took over officially on Charlie Kirk. So he dropped the ball that day, but whether it was on purpose or not, that remains to be seen. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Do you think that Brian Harpole actually met with these people and that there's a bigger conspiracy? Or do you think that he was just incompetent that day and messed up? And as always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this around. If you want to support the channel, you can become a member, or down in the description, there are links for donations, affiliate links, and channel merch. See you on the next one.